There are certain stories in the Bible that we tend to sanitize a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We tell them to kids in Sunday school. We stick them on flannel boards with these cute little felt figures. And we sort of gloss over the fact that the main characters are doing things that
are deeply problematic.
Yeah. If you or I did them today, we'd probably get arrested or, at the very least, disowned by our families.
Oh, absolutely. We have a real tendency to scrub the discomfort right out of the text.
Yeah.
We like our heroes to be shiny and, well, perfectly moral.
And the one that has always bothered me, really, truly bothered me since I was a kid, is the story of Jacob and Esau, Genesis 27.
The stolen blessing. It's a tough one.
It's more than tough. Let's just look at the facts here. You have Jacob, the younger brother.
Right.
You have his mom, Rebecca, and they are literally in the kitchen conspiring to defraud a dying blind man.
It does read like a heist movie when you put it that way, doesn't it?
It's worse than a heist. It's elder abuse. It's identity theft. And yet, this is the origin story of the chosen people. This is the namesake of Israel. And I think for a lot of us, we read it and we just think, okay, so God chose the cheater. Why?
It is the question. It's the question that has kept theologians and ethicists up at night for centuries. How do you square the holiness of God with the sheer duplicity of Jacob?
But, and this is why we are here today, we are not doing a standard, let's look at the Hebrew roots kind of deep dive.
No.
We aren't going to talk about the cultural inheritance laws of the ancient Near East, as interesting as that might be. We have a source material today that is, well, it's entirely different.
It is. We're looking at this story through the eyes of a 17th century French mystic, Madame Guyon.
Who, I might add, ended up in the Bastille because her ideas were considered so dangerous by the religious authorities of her time.
Dangerous is absolutely the right word, because Guyon doesn't read this as history. She doesn't really care about the legalities of the birthright. For her, she reads this story as a map.
A map of what?
A map of the human soul. Specifically, your soul.
And this is the part that just blew my mind when I was going through the notes. She flips the whole script. In her view, Jacob isn't just a guy who lived 4,000 years ago.
No, not at all.
Jacob represents something inside of us.
Precisely. To understand Guyon, you have to get her cast of characters straight. For her, Jacob represents the interior life. He stands for the contemplative spirit, the part of the soul that wants to sit still, that wants to connect with God in the quiet, the part that is led entirely by the spirit.
Okay, so if Jacob is the spirit, then who's Esau, the big, hairy, outdoorsy brother?
Esau is the active life. He represents the natural man. He's the hunter. He's the part of you that is busy, capable, working, sweating, achieving, and crucially relying on your own strength and your own senses.
So this isn't a fight between two brothers over a bowl of stew or a blessing. You're saying this is a civil war inside your own chest.
That's exactly it. It's the tension between doing and being. It's the eternal conflict between the part of us that wants to conquer the world and the part of us that knows it needs to surrender to God.
And the mission of this deep dive, then, is to explore Guyon's really radical thesis, that for the soul to reach its full potential, the active life Esau must be supplanted. It has to be replaced by the interior life Jacob.
And that involves some very strange twists and turns. We're going to be exploring a world where losing yourself is the ultimate goal, and where something like deception, like Jacob's trick, might actually be divine obedience in disguise.
It's a journey into 17th century mysticism, so I guess leave your modern sensibilities at the door.
That's probably for the best.
All right, let's get into the thick of it. The story opens with a command from Isaac. He's old, he's blind, he's on his deathbed. He calls in Esau, his favorite, and says, "Go hunt some game and make me that savory meal I love so I can bless you before I die."
And Rebecca hears this.
Rebecca, the mother, is listening. And the moment Esau leaves, she grabs Jacob. She says, "Go get me 2 good goats. I'll cook them to taste just like venison. You take them to your dad, pretend to be Esau, and you steal that blessing."
And this is the moment where we usually stop and say, wow, Rebecca's manipulative, terrible parent who's just playing favorites.
Right. She's a villain of the piece, ethically speaking. But Guyon, she actually defends her.
She doesn't just defend her, she elevates her. Guyon argues that Rebecca, in this allegory, represents love, or you could say the direct guidance of the Holy Spirit. And so she says Rebecca's actions were entirely godly.
Okay, I have to stop you there. You use the word godly. Rebecca is telling her son to lie to his father. She is cooking up a fake meal. She is orchestrating a full-blown fraud. How in the world does Guyon look at that and say, yes, this is what holiness looks like? That sounds like the kind of justification people use for cults. God told me to break the rules, so it's okay.
It's a very valid pushback. And honestly, if you view this through a standard ethical framework, a list of do's and don'ts, Guyon sounds completely off the rails here. But you have to understand her definition of virtue.
Okay, so define it for me. Because to me, virtue means things like telling the truth.
For Guyon and for many of the quietest mystics, virtue isn't about following a static written list of rules. True virtue is about total, absolute union with the will of God in the present moment.
So the source of the action matters more than the action itself.
Infinitely more. She argues that Rebecca, who represents the Spirit, was already established in God's love. So she wasn't acting out of some personal favoritism. It wasn't, oh, I just like Jacob better because he hangs out in the tent with me all day. She was acting under divine impulse. She remembered the prophecy that was given to her before the boys were even born. The older shall serve the younger.
So she's not just playing favorites, she's enforcing the prophecy.
She is executing a divine decree. Guyon writes that when a soul is truly established in God, they don't consult their own reason. They don't consult social conventions. They don't stop and ask, does this look polite? Does this look fair to Esau? They only ask one question. Is this what the Spirit is moving me to do?
That is incredibly dangerous territory, though. I mean, you can justify anything with that logic. The Spirit told me to rob a bank.
It is dangerous. And Guyon would be the first to admit that this level of trust isn't for the spiritually immature. But she says that for the interior person, the greatest fear isn't breaking a social rule or looking bad to the neighbors. The greatest fear is missing the movement of God.
Oh.
So as God says, move the blessing to the younger son, and you say, no, that's against the rules of inheritance, you are actually the one in rebellion. You are idolizing the rule over the ruler.
So in her view, Rebecca is the most obedient person in the room, even though she looks like the most deceitful one.
That's the paradox right there. To the Esau world, the world of our senses, our logic, and our external rules, the movements of the Spirit often look like a scandal. They look irrational. They look wrong.
Which brings us to Jacob.
Yep.
Because he's the one who has to actually pull this off. And he's hesitant.
He is. He's very hesitant.
He says to his mom, look, Esau is a hairy man. I am a smooth man. My dad might be blind, but he can still feel. If he touches me, he'll know I'm a fake. And I won't get a blessing. I'll get a curse.
Now look closely at what Jacob is worried about here. Is he saying, Mom, lying is a sin against the 9th commandment and we shouldn't do it?
No. He's saying, I might get caught. It sounds very practical.
It sounds like fear of punishment, right? But Guyon reads it deeper. She says Jacob isn't afraid of the lie, per se. He is afraid of being crooked. He is afraid of a lack of integrity.
What's the distinction there between lying and being crooked?
She argues that people on the interior path have this deep, innate love for truth. They fear deviating from their true nature more than they fear death. Jacob wants to be true. He knows he is smooth. He knows he is the contemplative type, and he is terrified of putting on an act of pretending to be something he isn't.
He doesn't want to be an imposter.
Exactly. His very nature recoils at the idea of deception. But here's the twist: obedience overrides even that natural integrity.
You're talking about blind obedience.
Blind obedience. This is a massive theme for Guyon. She teaches that abandoning oneself completely to God brings a profound peace, even when the action God is calling you to seems irrational or incredibly risky.
So Jacob states his objection, I might get cursed.
And Rebecca the Spirit says, let the curse be on me, just obey. And in that moment, she takes all the responsibility.
And he does it. He stops arguing.
He stops arguing. He abandons himself to the plan. Guyon says this is the absolute mark of the abandoned soul. You state your difficulty, you see the risk, but if the command from the Spirit is clear, you stop worrying. You trust that if you are obeying, the responsibility for the outcome falls on the commander, not on you.
That is a wild way to live. I'm just following orders from the divine. But then we get to the disguise itself.
Let's begin.
This is the part of the story that is just... It's so weird. Visually, it's bizarre, and frankly, it's a little bit gross.
It is very visceral, isn't it?
Jacob puts on his brother's clothes, which apparently smell like the field.
There.
Okay, that's one thing. But then Rebecca takes goat skins, literal dead animal hides, and wraps them around Jacob's hands and the smooth part of his neck.
She's trying to replicate the texture of Esau.
Esau must have been incredibly hairy if goat skins were a convincing dupe. I mean, are we talking like Wolfman level hairy?
Well, the text does suggest he was a very hairy man. But Guyon pauses here and goes really, really deep into this image. She asks the question, why does the interior man, the man of spirit, need to wear the skins of a goat?
What's your answer?
It's about camouflage. Think about what the skins represent. They are rough. They are animalistic. They smell like the dirt in the field. They represent the ordinary life.
The ordinary life.
Yes. Guyon says that true mystics, people who are deeply, profoundly connected to God, don't walk around glowing. They don't levitate. They don't usually speak in riddles or wear strange, holy robes.
They don't wear a sign that says, "Warning, I am holy."
Quite the opposite. They wear the skins of Esau. They have to function in the active world. They have jobs. They pay mortgages. They have to change diapers. They have to deal with traffic and office politics. To the outside observer, who is represented by Isaac's blind touch, they feel exactly like everyone else.
They feel hairy.
They feel rough. They feel natural. Guyon says God intentionally hides his choicest vessels inside these rough, common exteriors. It's a protective layer. It keeps them humble, and it hides them from the adoration or the persecution of the world. If you met a true saint on the street, according to Guyon, you probably wouldn't know it just by looking at them.
You just think they're another Esau, just another person rushing to catch the train or get groceries.
Exactly. But, and this is the crucial test in the story, there is one thing that gives them away.
Isaac spots it, or rather, he hears it. He says, the voice.
The hands are the hands of Esau, but the voice is the voice of Jacob.
What does the voice represent in this allegory for Guyon?
The voice is the expression of the soul. Guyon says that while the exterior might look just like the world, the interior person speaks the language of God.
Their speech betrays them?
Yes, in a way, the active world Esau speaks the language of the world. Profit, gain, stress, ego, the latest news, gossip. But the sanctified person, even if they're dressed in the skins of a busy career, operates on a totally different frequency. When they speak, you hear Jacob, you hear peace, you hear truth, you hear the word of God not quoted like a Bible verse, but spoken as an innate reality.
That is profound. It's like the disguise is perfect on the surface, but the frequency of their soul gives them away. You could be talking to a construction worker or a CEO, and suddenly they say something, and you just think, whoa, where did that come from?
That's the voice of Jacob coming through the skins of Esau. And Guyon suggests something fascinating about Isaac here. She wonders if Isaac wasn't entirely tricked.
Really, the text says he could not discern him.
True, on a physical level. But she suggests that on a deeper spiritual level, Isaac might have recognized the mystery playing out before him. He hears the voice. He knows it's Jacob. But he feels the skins. He's conflicted. But perhaps in that moment he realizes that God is orchestrating a switch. He realizes that the active life, Esau, isn't the true heir. The contemplative life, Jacob is. And so maybe he plays along. He permits the deception because he senses the divine will at work.
So it's not a scam, it's a conspiracy of the spirit.
A conspiracy to establish the proper order of things inside the human soul.
Which transitions us perfectly to the fallout. Because the jig is eventually up. Esau comes home, he's hunted the game, he's made the savory meat, he walks in all proud, expecting his reward, and Isaac realizes what happened.
And the Bible says Isaac trembled exceedingly. He trembled violently.
That trembling, I mean, usually we think he's scared of Esau's anger, or maybe he's just shocked that he was duped so badly.
But Guyon interprets it very differently. She says he trembled because he realized the spiritual weight of what had just happened. He trembled because he realized he almost went against God's divine order. He almost blessed the active life as the primary, most important thing.
He almost put the crown on the wrong head.
Exactly. He almost made doing the king. But when the truth comes out, notice what happens. He doesn't retract the blessing. He doesn't say, Jacob, get back in here, you little liar.
No, he doubles down. He tells Esau, I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed. It's final.
Right. Because in that moment of trembling, Isaac realizes the spiritual hierarchy. And this is the core of Guyon's teaching in this section. And listen closely, because this counteracts almost everything in our modern productivity-obsessed culture.
Okay, I'm listening.
The active life Esau is necessary. We need to do things. We need good works. We need structure and activity. But it is merely the means to an end. The end, the goal, is the contemplative life, simply enjoying God. Jacob, the doing, Esau, must always serve the being, Jacob. If you make activity the king, you've flipped the hierarchy. You've put the cart before the horse.
This connects directly to the Mary and Martha story in the New Testament, doesn't it?
It's the exact same dynamic. Martha's running around, busy with much serving. She's Esau. Mary's just sitting at Jesus' feet. She's Jacob. And Martha gets angry. Lord, tell her to help me. What does Jesus say? Martha, you're worried about many things, but Mary has chosen the better part.
Esau doesn't take this well, though. He's not like, oh, I understand the spiritual hierarchy. That's cool. He is furious.
He weeps, and then he gets murderous.
Yeah.
He vows to kill Jacob. Guyon calls this the persecution. And this feels like a very personal observation from Madame Guyon, given her own life.
How so?
Well, remember her context. She was a mystic, promoting interior prayer in a time of rigid religious structure. She was persecuted by the religious establishment, the busy, active, structure-loving people of her day. She writes that the active person often looks at the contemplative and gets jealous.
Jealous? Why jealous?
Yes. They see the favor resting on the contemplative. They see the ease, the peace, the intimacy with God that doesn't come from their own striving. And they get angry. They think, I'm working so hard, I'm hunting the game, I'm running all the church programs. Why does he get the blessing just for sitting in the tent?
It's the elder brother syndrome from the prodigal son story. I've slaved for you all these years, and you never gave me a party.
It's the same spirit. Guyon suggests that active people, even with good intentions, often seek their own glory in their works, consciously or unconsciously. They want the credit. They want their savory meat to be appreciated. But the contemplative seeks only God. This fundamental difference in motivation causes friction. The Esau spirit in the church will always misunderstand and persecute the Jacob spirit.
So if you are someone who really values your interior life, your time of quiet prayer, don't be surprised if the busiest people in your religious circle look at you with a bit of suspicion.
Expect it? You look lazy to them. You look unproductive because they're measuring by game hunted and you are measuring by time spent in the tent.
There's another character note here that I found really fascinating. Rebecca, who represents love, makes a complaint. After all this drama plays out, she says to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth.
Ah, yes, the daughters of Heth. These were the local Hittite women that Esau had married against his parents' wishes.
And what do they represent in the allegory?
Guyon interprets them as the natural or sensual life. So you have Esau, the active life, married to the sensual life.
Meaning his activity is wedded to worldly desires. His work is for worldly ends.
Yes, he works, but he works for worldly reasons, for praise, for comfort, for sensory pleasure. He's active, but he's driven by the senses. And Rebecca, who is love, is exhausted by this union. She says, I am weary of my life.
So when our spiritual activity gets mixed up with human ego, natural desires, and sensuality, it drains the life out of love.
Exactly. It exhausts the spirit. But the warning gets even sterner for Jacob. Rebecca then says, if Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, what good shall my life do me?
If the contemplative life mixes with the flesh,
it is an absolute disaster. Guyon warns that if a spiritual person, someone who has known deep union with God, turns back to the carnal life, it is a profound tragedy. It's far worse than the active person doing it. If a person who has walked the interior path marries the sensual life, they destroy love more than a common sinner does. It's a corruption of the highest order.
So, to save Jacob from this corruption, Isaac and Rebekah sent him away. And this leads us to section 3, the departure and the stone pillow.
Isaac sends Jacob to Paddan Aram to find a wife from his mother's family, from the line of pure love. And the spiritual meaning here is all about separation. To find true union with God, the pure bride, one must leave their home.
And home here means the self.
Yes, the self, your comfort zone, the familiar. You have to leave the strange land of the worldly life and go on a journey into the unknown.
And this journey leads Jacob to a certain place, later named Bethel. But he gets there, and the text notes a very specific detail. He stayed there that night because the sun was set.
And Guyon makes a huge deal about this change in lighting.
It's crucial, isn't it?
It's absolutely crucial. For the mystic, the setting of the sun represents the extinguishing of natural light and human understanding.
This is dark night of the soul territory.
Very much so. We rely so much on our own intellect, our own clarity, our own reason. We like to see where we are going. But to enter God's light, our light has to go out. We have to be willing to enter the darkness of pure faith.
So he's in the dark, he's vulnerable, he's all alone, and he needs a place to sleep. So he grabs a rock.
A stone.
Not a log, not a pile of leaves, a hard, cold stone, and he uses it as a pillow.
And Guyon just loves this image. She says, the stone represents Jesus Christ.
Christ is the rock. Makes sense.
Right, but think about the experience of it. Physically, it's a hard resting place. It's uncomfortable. It probably hurts your neck. But for the soul, she says, it is the only true rest.
She makes this beautiful, really challenging statement. It is better to sleep on a hard rock in God's will than to be comfortable in a strange land.
That's a bumper sticker for the mystics right there. Better a rock in God's will than a feather bed in the world.
It really challenges our addiction to comfort, doesn't it? We think that if we're uncomfortable, something must be wrong. God must not be with us.
And Guyon says, no, the discomfort is the point. She says this sleep Jacob falls into represents mystical death or ecstasy. He ceases all self-effort. His head, his intellect, his control, the part of him that tries to figure everything out, he rests in entirely on Christ, the hard rock. And it is in that hardness, in that total lack of self-comfort, that he finds the vision.
And what a vision it is. This brings us to section 4, the ladder and the dust.
Jacob's ladder, a ladder set on the earth and its top reached to heaven.
Now, most people, when they picture this, they think of it as a one-way street, a stairway to heaven. We climb up to get to God. But look at the details in the text. There are angels ascending and descending.
It's a two-way street. It's a current.
And Guyon really emphasizes this cycle.
She does. She says the spiritual journey isn't just a rocket ship straight up. It isn't glory to glory in the simple way we often think of it. It involves periods of ascending, feeling close to God, having clarity, experiencing joy, and periods of descending, humiliation, feeling dead to self, feeling like you're right back in the dirt.
And her point is that the true mystic, the true contemplative, is okay with both.
Yes, that's the definition of equanimity. The true contemplative doesn't care if they're going up or down. They accept all states as God's will. If God wants me on the bottom rung, in the mud, I'm happy because I'm on his ladder. If he pulls me to the top, I'm happy. The location on the ladder doesn't matter. The connection to the ladder does.
And who is at the top of the ladder?
God. The text says God stood above it or rested at the top. Guyon sees this as the ultimate destination. We descended from God in creation. We came down the ladder into this physical world. And the entire goal of life is to climb back up, to return to the source.
Now, God makes a promise to Jacob here. And this is where I want to slow down, because Guyon's take on this is, well, it's radically different from how I've ever heard it preached. God says, your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth.
The dust.
Usually we interpret that as a quantity thing. You're going to have millions of grandkids. Your family will be uncountable, like particles of dust.
And that's true on one level, of course. The promise is for a great nation. But Guyon, being Guyon, looks past the quantity and focuses on the quality of the metaphor. She asks, why dust? Why not stars? God promised Abraham stars. Why not sand? Why not jewels? Why dust?
Well, it's nothing. It's dirt. It's waste. It's what you sweep up and throw away.
Exactly. Guyon says the dust represents the very nature of true believers on the interior path. She says they are annihilated like dust.
Annihilated. That sounds so violent.
It means their ego, their self-will, is ground down to nothing. Think about the difference between a rock and dust. A rock has structure. It has resistance. If you try to move it, it pushes back. It has its own integrity. But dust has no structure of its own. It is completely pliable.
It's humble.
It is the lowest of the low. It is what gets trampled underfoot. But because it has no structure, it is also easily moved. Guyon is saying the true interior path produces people who are humble, pliable, and utterly lacking in self-importance. They are happy to be dust in God's universe.
That is so countercultural. Everything in our world tells us to be rocks, to be pillars, to be influencers. And she says, no, be dust.
Be dust. Because only dust can travel on the wind of the Spirit.
We'll come back to that thought in a minute. But first, Jacob wakes up from this dream, and he says this famous line, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it.
I did not know it. Guyon circles this phrase in red ink, metaphorically speaking. This, for her, is the principle of unconscious holiness.
Unconscious holiness, meaning you're holy but you don't even realize it.
Yes. She argues that the most advanced believers possess God, but aren't self-conscious about it. They don't spend their time analyzing their own spirituality.
Wow.
They aren't constantly taking their spiritual pulse, asking, how am I doing?
I love the analogy she uses here, the air analogy.
It's perfect, isn't it? She says, just as we breathe air without constantly thinking, I am now breathing air, I am inhaling oxygen, I am exhaling carbon dioxide, the mystic lives and moves and has their being in God without constantly reflecting on it. It just becomes their nature.
That's so freeing, because I feel like so much of modern spirituality is very self-obsessed. How was my quiet time? How am I feeling? Am I growing? It's all I.
Guyon would say that if you were constantly thinking, wow, look at how spiritual I am right now, you aren't actually that deep yet. You're still self-focused. The goal is to be so lost in God that you forget you're even doing it. You wake up one day and realize, oh, God was here this whole time and I was just living.
But then, right after that realization, Jacob gets scared. He says, how dreadful is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven.
And that brings us to our last section, section 5, the dreadful gate.
Dreadful. Why dreadful? Why not? How lovely is this place? Why not how beautiful or how cozy?
Because the gate to heaven involves the total death of the self. That is why it is dreadful.
It's not a turnstile at a theme park. It's a funeral. For you.
It is. It's the place of judgment for the flesh, for the ego. Guyon says the dread is a holy fear. It's the sobering realization that to go through this gate, I cannot survive. My ego, my desires, my plans, my active Esau life, they all have to die at the threshold.
That creates a sense of awe.
It creates trembling. It's not a horror movie fear. It's the awe of the creature standing before the Creator and realizing how small and contingent they are. It's the dust realizing it is in the presence of the wind that can scatter it.
So Jacob takes the stone he slept on, sets it up as a pillar, and pours oil on it. He sanctifies the spot, and then he makes a vow. And this vow, honestly, for a guy who just saw angels ascending and descending and heard the voice of God, it seems kind of underwhelming.
It does seem incredibly modest, doesn't it?
He says, if God will be with me, and give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my Father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. That's it. A sandwich and a shirt, after seeing the cosmos opened up.
But look at it through the lens of the interior path. Guyon points out that the interior person doesn't ask for spiritual riches. They don't ask for visions or power or great gifts or a big ministry.
They don't ask to be a megachurch pastor or a famous miracle worker.
No, they ask for daily bread, just enough grace for this moment, and clothing, a covering for their shame and weakness, just enough to get by. They're content with the bare necessities because their treasure isn't in spiritual experiences or things, it's in God alone.
And the ultimate goal, to return to my Father's house in peace.
That's the ultimate desire, not conquest, not becoming a great nation, even though God just promised him that. His deep personal desire is simply return. To return to the source of his being God the Father and rest there. That is the only ambition of the mystic.
There's one last detail Guyon points out about this vow. Jacob starts with if. If God will be with me. She notes that this implies a real lack of assurance.
And this is a huge comfort to many, I think. She says, on this path, you often lack that feeling of assurance or certainty. You don't always feel saved. You don't always feel God's presence. You walk blindly. You say, if God is with me. And you just keep walking in faith.
It's not the name it and claim it certainty we so often hear about in some circles. It's a humble, limping trust.
It is. And remember, Jacob walks away from this incredible encounter to a life of real hardship. He's going to work for his uncle Laban for 20 years. He's going to be tricked himself over and over. But he walks away with a promise and a path.
So let's zoom out. We've gone from the stolen blessing in the kitchen to the ladder in the wilderness. What is the big overarching takeaway here from Guyon?
I think the summary is this. The story of Jacob is the story of the inner contemplative life triumphing over the outer active life. It has to start with what looks like a deception, because the spiritual life always looks like a trick or a scandal to the logical sensory world. It looks unfair to the Esau's of the world.
It looks like weakness. It looks like hiding in a tent while everyone else is out there working and achieving.
But it is the only path that ultimately leads to the ladder. It's the only path that truly connects earth to heaven. And the cost of that path is allowing yourself to be ground to dust.
It really makes you rethink what spiritual strength even is.
It does. For Guyon, true strength isn't asserting yourself. True strength is the capacity to be annihilated in God.
And that leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. I want to spend our last few minutes on this really powerful image of the dust, because God says to Jacob, your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth.
Yes, the dust.
In our world, everything tells us to be solid, be a rock, be unshakable, build a platform, be large, make an impact.
But Guyon asks us, what would it mean to embrace being dust?
Why in the world would we want that? It sounds like nothing.
Think about the physics of it. If you are a rock and the wind, the spirit blows, what happens?
Nothing. You stay put. You resist the wind.
You have your own structure, your own weight, your own will. You are immovable, which we think is a virtue. But if you are dust, mere particles with no structure of their own, and the wind blows.
You move instantly. You fly. You're scattered.
You go exactly where the wind takes you. You have no resistance. Guyon is arguing that the ultimate goal of the interior path is to lose your structural integrity, your ego, your will, your need to be someone so that you can be moved effortlessly by the Spirit of God.
That is, well, it's beautiful, but it's also kind of terrifying. It's the annihilation of the self.
It is. She calls it becoming nothing. And she poses the question to the reader and to us. Are you strong enough to be weak? Are you substantial enough to become dust? Because only the dust gets to ascend on the currents of the ladder. The rocks stay on the ground.
Wow. Only the dust gets to ascend.
It's a complete inversion of how we're taught to live our lives, spiritually and otherwise.
It certainly is. Well, on that note, I think we all have some thinking to do. Are we trying to be Esau the hunter, building a reputation and cooking our own savory meat? Or are we willing to be Jacob, wearing the skins, sleeping on a rock, and maybe, just maybe, becoming dust?
That's the question.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mystical world of Jacob and Madame Guyon. It's heavy stuff, but hopefully it helps you see that old story and maybe yourself a little differently.
And check your voice. Make sure it's Jacob's.
For more spiritual resources, visit lokaken.ai.